We're just going to give maybe one or two more minutes to give others a chance to hop on. And if you haven't done so already, if you could type your name and the agency you represent in the chat for attendance purposes, or if you don't have access to the chat, then we're going to do introductions and we can record your attendance at that time. Thank you, Cheryl. No worries. We will have plenty of time for questions and answers. Cheryl, you're representing two organizations? Okay, thank you everyone for being patient. I just want to give a couple more minutes for those to join. However, for the sake of time, we'll go ahead and get started. Again, welcome everyone to the Emergency Food and Shelter Program, which often is we always like using acronyms, so often known as the EFSP program, and this is for the local board for Riverside County. And this training is for the ARPA-R technical assistance. And the reason why it's ARPA-R is because in early 2021, there was an ARPA phase. However, that ARPA phase was only for humanitarian assistance. So the R represents the regular program. So I wanted to make sure to explain that the reason why it's ARPA-R. And that's the ARPA is Americans Recovery Plan Act. But the R, as I mentioned, represents the regular program. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to do some introductions. Then we're going to go through the overview of EFSP. Then we're going to review the ARPA-R RFA process, and then the application, and then we'll have some time for question and answers. However, if you have a burning question throughout the presentation, feel free to raise your hand or type it in the chat, and I'll be trying to monitor between the both. Sounds good? So yep. My name, sorry?
I said yes.
Okay, good. So my name is Rashana Walker. I am one of the senior program specialists here at the County of Riverside, the Department of Housing and Workforce Solutions. And I am the local board contact for the EFSP program. And later on in the presentation, you'll see why I'm considered the local board contact. And I'm with Housing and Workforce Solutions, so we just oversee the EFSP program. So administratively, we oversee the EFSP program. So if I would like at this time, I'm going to go down the participants list, and you just Say your name, your title, the organization you represent, the EFSP service category your agency will be applying for or tends to apply for, and then the number of years of providing that service. So I'll go down the participants list and I will start with, there is a phone number ending in 3582.
That's me. Terry from Circle of Care. We've been participating for about 15 years.
Thank you. And what service category are you planning to apply
Oh, I'm
for?
sorry, other food.
Okay, thank you, Terry. And then there, I see Allison.
Yes, hi, my name is Allison Davenport, and I'm with Mercy House. I'm their Chief Strategy and Compliance Officer. We're interested in applying for the mass shelter funding for our new Tulane Place Bridge Housing Program, which is supposed to begin here in the next couple of weeks. And we will be new to EFSP in Riverside County, but we've been an EFSP provider in other jurisdictions for, over 25 years.
Thank you. What was the name of your organization again?
Mercy House.
Mercy House. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
And then Becky.
Hi, I'm Becky with Jewish Family Service. We will be looking at the other food category, and we've been doing this a few years with our housing programs, but in the past we did get this funding for our shelter.
Thank you, Becky. And Cheryl. Cheryl, you're on mute if maybe not. If you're talking, we can't hear you, Cheryl. Cheryl, we'll come back. We'll circle back to you. Michelle.
Hi, I'm Michelle Gibson from Breakthrough Community Development Corporation, and we feed the homeless and clothe the community, and we feed the community as well. And we've been doing that for several years, but this is our first time tapping into your program.
Good, good. We love to see new organizations apply for this funding. We love to expand our local recipient organization list. So thank you for your interest. And Cheryl, are you able to unmute, or you may be having audio issues? I'm not sure. Well, raise your hand once you get it up, and then I'll circle back to you. Okay? So we're going to go into the overview of EFSP. So what is EFSP? As I mentioned earlier, it's the Emergency Food and Shelter Program. It's it's a federal program, and it's administered through the Department of Homeland Security's, the FEMA organization. So the Emergency Food and Shelter Program was authorized in 1983 under the Stuart B. McKinney Homeless Act. And since then it's been renamed to the McKinto-Vento Homeless Act. So EFSP was created to supplement and expand the work of local social service organizations, both nonprofit and governmental, in an effort to help with economic emergencies. And the reason for supplement and expand is in red, because it is truly a supplemental program. And later on in the presentation, I'll get to what is required for this program for it to be a supplemental. So the chain of responsibility. So FEMA is the funding organization. So they receive the funding from Congress. They award provide the award appropriation to the EFSP National Board. And they also monitor the program performance. And then they report back to Congress on the use of the funds. Then there is the national board, and the national board consists of the listed organizations. They make the policy decisions up at the national board and set the program parameters. They select jurisdictions by a formula to receive annual funding, and they disperse the funding directly to the organizations. And the reason why that is important too is because although the continuum of care is the local board contact, the funding comes directly from FEMA to the organizations. And then there's the local board, which the local board accounts for, and I apologize, I'm looking at two different screens. The local board, our responsibility is to advertise the availability of funds, to oversee the competitive selection process, and approve local organizations to receive the funding. Does anybody else hear that echo?
Yes.
Okay, I'm just gonna mute everyone. Do you still hear an echo? Okay, perfect. The local board oversees the competitive selection process and approve those agencies to receive funding. They also determine the amount of the amount and categories for funding for each phase. They also make local policy decisions. So aside from the national policies and program parameters, the local board can set additional policies and program parameters locally on a local level. There are some in this presentation, you will see the local program parameters that was set by our local board here in Riverside County. And so the local board also monitors the agency performance, and they review the reporting and documentation that is sent up to the national board. And then there is the local recipient organization, also known as LRO. The LROs provide the direct services. They use the funds to supplement and expand their existing food and shelter services. And they, of course, comply with EFSP reporting and documentation requirements. Before I go on, are there any questions so far? No. Oh, I see a hand. Terry, you have a question? You are muted if you're speaking. Terry? Okay, feel free to jump in if your audio starts working. Okay. So I'm gonna move forward. So the County of Riverside, our local board consists of the listed organizations. This past year, we added 2 organizations to our local board, which is Access Foundation and Feed in America, Riverside, and San Bernardino. So we added those 2 organizations to our Riverside County local board. And if your agency is interested in becoming part of the local board, we can get into that. We can always have an offline conversation about how you sign up or request to be part of the local board. So as I mentioned earlier, the local board decides on their local funding priorities. So for this phase, and as well as previous phase, the last couple of phases, the local board voted to set aside 65% of our funds for shelter, and 35% of the funds of our allocation, 35% of those funds will be for food. So that's an example of what the local board, when they set additional program guidelines or priorities. So phase ARPA R, Riverside County was awarded $3,784,363 to supplement emergency food and shelter programs. The spending period for this phase is going to be running concurrently with phase 39, and that is the spending period can be from November 1st, 2021 to no later than April 23rd, 2023. And the reason why it says no later than April 23rd, 2023 is because the local board they will be able to decide on the end date, the spending end date for this phase. However, the options other than no later than April 23rd, 2023 have been made available this far by the national board, because there will be other dates prior to April 23rd, but they haven't made those dates available yet. So we do know that the last date for this spending period will be April 23rd, 2023. Now, the local board can choose to elect maybe a month before, as they did in phase 38. They can elect to say, you know what, we want our spending end date to be March 23rd, 2023. So that's the reason why it says no later than April 23rd. Any questions so far? I do see a question. I will on other food, can we use funding for transportation of food? As with the new law in California, there's a great deal of donated food. Yes, Terry, you can use the funding for the transport of the food. So this is our timeline for this request for funding, request for applications. It was released February 14th. You guys are attending the mandatory technical assistance training, which is today. The question and answer period ends tomorrow, February 23rd, and the deadline to submit the application is Friday, February 25th. Now, the timeline is tight from the time of the release, but the national board has given timelines as well that we have to meet and ensure that we give time for the evaluators to overlook the applications, as well as the local board to meet to approve the funding allocations, because the local board has to approve those allocations. And then for eligibility, all agencies providing food and shelter services for at least 1 year in Riverside County can apply for funding. And as I mentioned before, the categories are shelter and food, but within shelter, there is a mass shelter category. There's a other shelter category. Other shelter could include motel vouchers, as well as rent and mortgage assistance. For food, there's served meals, other food category, and food pantries that can be reimbursed for under these categories. Sorry. And then supervisorial district, Riverside County, we're separating in 5 districts. Applicants are required to identify which of the 5 districts they intend to provide services in. And then the applications, all applicants must complete the required applications. And then there's a section for new applicants, and then there is a separate modified section for returning applicants. So new applicants are required to complete the entire application, and then returning applicants, there's, I believe is the cover page in Part B that they would have to, they would only have to complete. And these are the criteria for organizations. You have to be a nonprofit, not be debarred or suspended from receiving federal funding, must have a checking account, an accounting system, must have a federal employer identification number, have a DUNS number issued by the Duns and Bradstreet, and have the organizations must have a valid email address, conduct an annual audit if receiving more than $100,000, or conduct an annual accountant's review if receiving more than $50,000, but no more than $99,000. Organizations, like I said, they must be providing services and using its other resources in the area in which they are seeking funding for. Practice non-discrimination. Have a voluntary board if it's a private or nonprofit. And then it says, to the extent involve homeless individuals and families through employment, volunteer programs, or etc. I know a lot of agencies have a homeless, formerly homeless advocate on some of their boards, or hire those with lived experience. Eligible activities, again, it's mass shelter, other shelter in the form of hotel or motel vouchers, rent and mortgage assistance, served meals such as the mass feeding, other food, which are food pantries, food vouchers, or food banks, and then the administrative costs. But I do want to clarify for administrative costs, the Emergency Food and Shelter Program only allows for 2% admin costs. That 2% admin costs is going to the local board contact for administration of the program. So LROs should only be applying for the first 5 eligible activities. Administrative cost is only listed as eligible because it is an eligible activity, but I need to mention that administrative cost is already allocated to the local board contact. And then this is just a list of the Riverside County supervisorial districts, which may change, but it will change within the next year to 2, depending on the election. So for phase ARPA R, new applicants, a minimum request per supervisorial district is 5,000. The maximum request is 20,000 for new applicants. That means you were not awarded in phase 38 or 39. And then for phase 30, so for returning applicants, that means you were awarded in phase 38 or 39. The minimum is still 5,000, but the maximum for returning applicants, meaning you were awarded in phase 38 or 39, is 75,000. Again, the local board funding allocation is the 65-35 percentage, which is 65 shelter, 35 food. And then applicants may apply for funding in any district, whether you guys have an office or other physical presence, in addition where you provide at least 5% of the agency's total services in that district. Any questions so far of what I went over? Are you guys following along? Yes, no, maybe so.
Hi, I have a quick question. This is Allison again with Mercy House. My question is in regards to agency eligibility. You mentioned that an agency would have needed to have provided either food or shelter for a minimum of 1 year in Riverside County before applying. In our circumstance, we're a brand new shelter. Are we still eligible to apply even though we don't have 1 year of shelter in Riverside County, but have multiple years of shelter experience in other jurisdictions?
And from historical knowledge and looking back over, Mercy House was an actual LRO. And I forgot what phase it was because I saw you guys listed on there. So are you saying that you guys never received EFSP funding in Riverside County?
Correct, to my knowledge, we have not.
Okay, I'll connect with you offline because I believe you guys have an LRO number. Do you guys receive funding in San Bernardino County?
We do in San Bernardino County, Orange County, and Ventura County.
Okay, so your circumstance may be a little bit different. So I'll get with you offline for that one, for you to answer to your question. But I believe you have an LRO for Riverside County. I just was looking at the list last week, so I'll get with you offline. I believe you will be eligible.
Okay, that sounds great. Thank you.
No problem. Becky, you have a question?
Well, just a quick question. It looks like and maybe it could be a delay on my end, but if you're trying to share your screen, like a PowerPoint, I'm not seeing anything.
Uh-oh. I'm glad you said something.
I mean, I don't know if other people are, because my screen freezes periodically, so I don't know if it's me or if
No, I
it's just
wasn't
not
sharing. I'm glad you said something. Thank you. All this time, I thought I was sharing my screen. I truly apologize for that. I truly did. I thought it was just being shared. Thank you, Becky. Can everyone see the screen now? Okay. And trust me, I did have other slides. Okay. So application standards. So all proposals must be submitted in accordance with the standards and specification on the RFA and attachment A project application in order to be considered for funding. Housing and Workforce Solutions should not pay any costs incurred or associated in the preparation for this or any proposal for participation in the procurement process. Project application and attachments, they are divided into 4 parts. Each part must be completed by new applicants. For phase 38 and 39, as I mentioned before, those award recipients would only need to complete the cover page in Part B. And the reason for that is because we just went through an RFA for phase 39 prior to us receiving the notification that we had this additional funding. So that's the reason why they don't have to submit an additional requirements. Your narrative is limited to 10 pages, and that's including questions. Narratives that exceed 10 pages will not be reviewed or scored. So make sure your narrative is, the maximum is 10 pages or less. New agencies must submit all required documentation. And then agencies, again, this just repeats that new returning agencies that were awarded in phase 38 and 39 would only have to submit the cover page and Part B, which is the funding request. Agencies may withdraw their proposals at any time prior to the due date and time by submitting notification of withdrawal signed by the organization's authorized agent.
Excuse me?
Yes.
This is Cheryl Peterson.
Hi.
Hi, I finally got the microphone to work. I had a question on the agencies that have already been approved for phase 39. So I understand the applicant cover page and Part B, the EFSP funding request. So are you saying that we do not submit a cover letter like we did before with that also?
No, you don't need to submit the cover letter, only the
Oh,
cover page, which has all the contact information,
right.
and then the funding request that shows what the amount you're requesting and the districts you're requesting the funding for.
Oh, okay. All right. Great. That
It
saves,
is simple since you just went through the process.
yeah, that saves me work. Thank you.
Yeah, because we know that it can be lengthy, so we just, your application was just reviewed, so only those two parts of the application you will need to submit.
Okay.
Just FYI, for phase 40, we are requiring all applicants to
Mhm.
complete the entire application, so
Okay.
keep that in mind.
All right. I will. Thank you.
Uh-huh. Any other questions? I see another hand, but I can't tell who it is. Well, jump in if you have any questions. I don't.
Ms.
Beck-
Huntley, this is Becky West.
Okay.
We don't need any kind of narrative at all if we've got phase 39.
No narrative
Okay.
because of
Thank you.
phase 38 and 39. So
Okay.
the local board decided to keep the applications for returning organizations simple because of the quick turnaround. And you already have the history of EFSP and the documentation and all of that. So that's the
Okay,
reason
great.
why the local board decided for returning applicants, those were the only two parts that you would need to complete. However, like I said, in the future, phase 49 phase 40, you will need to complete all sections.
Hi, I had a question.
Okay.
Okay, this is Michelle Gibson. I wanted to know, you said all of the things that the nonprofit needed in order to apply. Can you go over those few little things for me, please? You said the checking account, the Dun and Bradstreet number. Oh, is it up there? Let me see.
This.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
I'm gonna take a picture. Thank you.
No problem.
Give me 1 second. Thank you.
And the not barred or suspended from receiving federal funding, later on in the presentation, I'll show you where to go to print that, to get that printout. Okay, scoring process. So new applicants will be scored on the following areas, the priority, and these are for what Becky mentioned earlier, the narrative, the priority and need statement, the performance outcomes, the accounting and financial management, capacity and program management, and the coordination and collaboration. So all applicants that pass the threshold review will be evaluated and scored by the Reviewing Evaluation Committee, and that's comprised of non-conflicted local board members and volunteers from the community. Then threshold review is just for compliance with the requirements of the RFA. And it's important to know that applications that don't pass the initial threshold are not eligible to appeal. But they won't be reviewed. They also won't be reviewed for funding. So they have to pass the minimum threshold with the requirements, have all the required documents, submitted the application on time. That's part of the initial threshold review. And then organizations with unresolved EFSP compliance issues are not eligible to apply for funding until the compliance is cleared with national, which means any organization that have received EFSP in the past and still have unresolved compliance issues they won't be funded until they're cleared with the national board. Also, organizations that had their funds reallocated by the local board or returned funds to the national as a result of gross negligence, inadequate use of funds, failure to use the funds for the purposes intended, and any other violation of the national or local board guidelines for phase 38 or any other phases are not eligible to apply. Organizations that reallocated 25% or more of their funding to another LRO in either the last 3 funded phases, and that's phase 37, phase cares, and phase 38, will not be eligible to apply for this phase. And then 10 points will be deducted from the total score if returning organizations have not turned in their required reports or documentations from any other previous phases. Any questions regarding that? No? Feel free to raise your hand. Becky, you have another question, or is it still from earlier?
It's still from earlier. I don't know if I can put it down.
Let me see if I can help you with that. I can help you with that. There it is. And I still can't tell because I'm sharing my screen. Oh, Terry. No. Michelle, do you have a question?
No, you answered it for me.
Okay, thank
Oh,
you.
one more thing. What is an LRO? So we,
Local recipient organization.
thank you.
Mhm. So ranking and funding. All applications that are scored and receive a score of 70 or above will be considered for funding. So ranking is determined by application score and region. And it's hard to explain it, but just know that there is a formula that is used, and it's the ranking is determined in that formula as well as the supervisory district. So if I try to explain it now, it'll be very confusing. So just know that ranking and district is a component of the formula used for funding recommendations. And I went over the threshold review. Applications that does not pass, as I said earlier, threshold requirements will not be considered for funding. And then just another reminder that a review committee is responsible for evaluating and scoring the application. So we have non-conflicted board members, and we also have volunteer community members that are familiar with emergency and food shelter services. So the volunteer evaluators, they attend an orientation. Each application is read by at least 2 to 3 evaluators. And for the last couple of phases, we've had at least 3 evaluators, and one of them we have 4 evaluators for that. It looks at each application. And again, if only applications that score 70 or higher will be considered for funding. And then final ranking and recommendations, they're submitted to the local board for approval. So the local board has to approve all of the funding recommendations in our jurisdiction, and then we submit to the national board for final approval, to where they can say yes, they confirm that there are no compliance issues, and they have no outstanding issues with of receiving federal funding. So the ultimate confirmation comes from the national board after the local board has approved it. And again, just to reiterate, the national board directly funds are all EFSP LROs. So no funding is funneled through the COC. It comes directly from the national board. It comes directly from FEMA. Now we're going to get into the application. So as I mentioned before, there's a cover page. All applicants must complete that cover page, and that cover page, it lets us know the contact information for your organization. Part A is just applicant information. And then, and it just goes into if you're a new applicant or returning applicant. And then part B is the funding request. All applicants must complete part B. We need to know the amount and the district that you're applying for. The amount, district, and eligible activity that you're applying for. And then for new applicants, the required documentation. Now, there's a list on the application that is labeled Part C, required documentation. And it comes with a checklist. So, and that checklist is required to be submitted as well. So the checklist will help you confirm that you have the required documentation for your application. And then the narrative section is part D, and all new applicants are required to complete the narrative section. Any questions regarding that? I don't see any hands raised, or I don't see any. Let's see the chat. Terry, I'll answer your question in a second, okay? I see your question. Can we use funding for leasing truck for transportation? I'll answer that question in a second. So this is just, I'm gonna skip over this. This is just returning applicants for just the cover page and the part B, which is the funding request for returning applicants, those who are awarded in phase 38 or 39. So this is a list of mandatory attachments, and it's also part of the application that you received. A current copy of your 501c3, copy of your board roster, your scheduled board meeting. So it could be a list of your scheduled meetings, copy of your most recent 3, I believe it says 3, board member meeting minutes, your financial year-end report, which could be an independent annual audit, an annual review, or financial year-end report. New organization must submit match documentation, client forms, client non-discrimination statement, your mission statement. And if you have hotel agreements, if you plan on applying for other shelter and applying for motel vouchers, you would have to submit those agreements. And then the excluded parties list verification, and that's what I was speaking of earlier when I said I'll show you how to get that information. But the next slide is going to walk you through how to get that information printed out. And also included in the application is the 211 Community Resource Database program information form. And that information we will need to send to 211 so they can have your information for the database. And you will need the COC membership letter, which the template is also included in the project application. You just will need to fill out, I believe it's highlighted in yellow, and then place on your letterhead to participate in the COC as part of the COC membership. Any questions off of this list, or any questions so far other than the EPLS?
Hi, just a quick question in terms of submission. Do you want all these attachments submitted as like a separate file from the application, or do you want them attached to the full application? And I'm speaking for a new applicant.
So you can submit it okay, so you can submit several documents, but you have to label them Part A, Part B, Part C, Part D, And then for the attachments, you can label that attachments. But it can all be part of one email. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Oh, we do need to specify part A, the different parts.
Very good. Thank you. And then another question regarding the financial year-end report. If our agency in particular, we have not yet completed our fiscal year 2021 audit. It's currently in progress. Is it fine to submit in the fiscal year 1920 instead?
Yes. It's the most recent completed year-end audit.
Great. Thanks again.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions? Those are good, great. All questions have been great questions. There are no other questions. I'm going to move forward. So this is the site that you would go on to and to go and put your agency's information in to show that you have no outstanding suspensions or outstanding issues with federal funds, receiving federal funds. So if you want to take a picture of this, it's also located in, I believe this site is located on the application as well, but this is the System for Award Management, which is the SAM, the SAM's website. So this is just giving you directions. Once you go onto the SAM website, you go on this, you search the records, and then you put in your DUNS number. And once you put in that DUNS number, it should pop up, your agency should pop up. And if you have not registered, I suggest you register on this site because it may take up to 2 days in order for you to be able to get this information right here. So once you put in your DUNS number, if you've ever received any federal funding, you put in your DUNS number, and this is just an example. Like for this one is Valley Restart. Once this pops up, all you got to do is press print and submit that along with your attachment, your required documentation. Any questions regarding the SAM website? Is anyone not familiar with the SAM website? No? Okay. Always feel free to reach out if you have any questions. My information is at the end of the presentation, as well as on the RFA and application if you have any questions. So for Part B, the funding request. So this is how you would complete this. So say, for instance, you want to apply for served meals. There is a per diem limit set by the national board, and they just increased that limit for this phase and phase 39. It used to be $2 per meal, but now it's $3 per meal. And then what you would do is you put the estimated number of meals and multiply it, multiply A times B, and that gives you the funds requested. Now this other food, this is an example of $10 per meal. This is an example of how you would do the math on to find out how much you guys want to request. This $10 is an example, but the $3 is set by the national board. We can't change that $3 amount. And that's the reason why it's set where you guys, it's already pre-filled in the application. So it is based off of the number of meals you guys put down in Part B. And then for shelter services, again, the $12.50 a night is also a national, this is a set amount by national office. We cannot change or modify that amount. It's set by the national board. So if you're doing mass shelter, you're multiplying the $12.50 per night by the number of clients and bed nights, and that's how much you would get for the funding request. How much you would request for funding. Now, the hotel motel voucher amount is, that amount is, this is an example, but that amount is not set by national board. But it's set by the average cost for hotel amounts per night. And that average cost is $80. So you multiply that by the number of clients you guys are proposing to serve to get the funding request. And the rent and mortgage assistance, same thing. This 1,200 is an example only, times the anticipated amount of individuals or households to serve, and then you'll get the funding requested amount. It's good to know, I do want to note that in the past, phase 38 and prior, actually phase cares in 37 and prior, the local board set that maximum amount of rent or mortgage assistance to $1,200 per month. However, for phase 39 and moving forward, because we know that rent and mortgage have went up, the cost of living has went up in our county. We are not limiting it to $1,200 a month. We're limited to the maximum amount of the rental or mortgage amount. So let's say someone comes and say, I need assistance with my rent, and their rent is $2,000. So the max amount is $2,000. However, you can provide up to 3 months of rent for that household. In the past, it's only been 1 month of rent, 30 days. For phase 39 ARPA R, they just increased it to up to 90 days or 3 months. So you can provide, I'm going to use this $1,200 example. You can provide $1,200. If their rent is $1,200, you can provide $1,200 times 3 if you are going to assist that household, if needed, assistance with for 3 months. I hope that wasn't confusing, and I'm going to stop there to see if I did confuse anyone, and if I did, I would have to re-explain it. Did I confuse anyone with that? So the maximum amount is 1 month up to the 1 month of rent and mortgage assistance, up to 3 months, and that means if their rent or mortgage amount is $2,000, you can provide $2,000 for up to 3 months. And it's also explained in the RFA as well. So hopefully I'm not confusing anyone. And if I did right now, just raise your hand, let me know, and I can explain it a little bit better. I can attempt. No? Okay.
I'm sorry, can I ask a quick question on the shelter bed nights? You said that there's only 30 nights maximum per client, but if the shelter allows for a stay to be longer than 30 days, can we just not include the additional bed nights that client would have taken at the shelter? Or how do we account for that on our per diem worksheets?
So great question. And I'm glad you brought that up, because that's actually something that I forgot to change. For phase 39 and ARPA R, they just increased that to 90 days. So to answer your question, it's 90 days. And then you said, how do we account for the additional nights that EFSP doesn't cover? That's when that's the purpose of the match funds. So you're supposed to have 55% match to cover the cost of EFSP not covering. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does make sense. So for example, say a client stays 100 nights, on our per diem worksheets for EFSP, we would only want to include that one individual for 90 of their bed nights, and then the other 10 bed nights would be provided for by other funds. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Great question. Any other questions? No. So part B, the funding request, this is how it looks. This is an example. So this organization, I'm going to say ABC organization, they're going to provide served meals, other food, mass shelter, other shelter, and rent and mortgage assistance. They're going to provide all of this in District 1. So they add up all of the amounts and it's 51,000. They're also going to provide other shelter and rent and mortgage assistance in District 3. So they also add up this line, and that's the total cost for this district, 23,500. So they're also going to provide services in District 5, but also only other shelter and rent and mortgage. So they have the total of 23,500. So this is how you would complete this funding request, and then you put the total at the bottom. So this ABC organization is requested 98,000. Now, by looking at this example, you can tell that this organization is not a new organization because they have there's the $20,000 cap per district for new organizations. So by looking at this, you can tell this is a returning organization. But this is an example of how you would complete the Part B funding request. Any questions regarding that? No? Okay, well, always feel free to circle back if you think of any other questions or anything that arises. So, like I said earlier, EFSP is intended to supplement a existing program. So new applicants will need to show at least 55% of the total program budget is from other funding sources. So in this example, I'm going to say a ABC organization, they have a $360,000 budget to complete the services listed, served meals, other food, mass shelter, other shelter, rent, and mortgage. The total budget is $360,000. Now, the 55% of the $360,000, the match requirement for that is a $198,000. So it is the 55% match for the total budget of the program, although they are requesting $98,000. Does that make sense? Okay. So you would have to show, like, for example, they said the current funds they're being used is through Panera Bread, Stater Brothers, or Sprout, $10,000. You would have to submit documentation to show you're receiving $10,000 from Panera, Stater Brothers, and Sprouts. So on and so forth. Like for mass shelter, you guys are receiving ESG, CDBG, county funds, private donations. We would need to see documentation that you're receiving the amount listed on your application. In this case, this for mass shelter is the $100,000. We would need to see the $100,000 match documents from the ESG, CDBG, and county funds. Any questions regarding match? No. Okay. So it's, again, because I get this question a lot, it's the 55% of the total budget for the program, not what's requested. It's the total budget for the program. So here's an example. An LRO provides food distribution in District 4 and 5. The total budget is $180,000. The 55% match of $180,000 is $99,000. So the but their EFSP request is not 140, sorry, is only $40,000. Does that make sense? And the reason why the 99,000 is in red, because the 99,000 is the 55% match of the $180,000. So we would have to see documentation of the $99,000. Does that make sense? Okay. I don't see any questions so far. I hope I am as clear as possible. If not, just let me know. Part C is the required documentation for new applicants. We make sure you have these documents when we go through the internal threshold review. And any applicants that's missing any of these attachments will not be scored. And applications that do not pass the threshold will not be scored. However, I am nice. Sometimes it's just a little glitch or something happens. I may reach out to the organization to ask, hey, did you mean to not attach this, or I can't open this document, can you resend it? So I will reach out to organizations. So just make sure that you try to have, well, you do have all of the attachments. And I understand things happen, so I tend to be a little more lenient than I should be, but I want to see everyone succeed. Part D, the application narrative. Every question must receive a response. Each application is read and scored. Again, applications that receive a score of 70 or higher will be considered for funding. And this is just going over the timeline again. Again, just want to highlight the deadline to submit applications is this coming Friday by 5 p.m. and it's by email only to efsp@rivco.org. And then any questions at this time? And Terry, let me try and take a stab at your question. So can we use funding for leasing a truck for transportation? So I'm going to double check this, but I believe it is not an eligible cost, but I will double check that because I don't like saying no without double checking anyway. So I will double check that. And I know it came up last during our final reports. So I'm going to double check it, and then I believe it said no, but I'm going to double check it and I'll get back to you on that one. Because that would be equipment more than $5,000. And you guys are a food bank, correct, Terry? Okay, I'll double check and get back to you. Does anyone have any other questions? And I know that, and let me expand or elaborate on other food. The reason why Terry is asking is because in the other food category, it is the expenses that you incur when providing like food boxes, food bags, when you're providing food services to those in need. So that's the reason why it's other food. If you're purchasing food to provide to those other to those families, those purchases are eligible expenses in the other food category. And then I wanted to provide these references because if you go into the national website, there is a EFSP manual. And in that manual, I used to know the page number for other food, but I can't think of it off the top of my head. But there is an other food in the program manual. There's an other food section which lists the eligible activities for or eligible expenses for other food. to give you a broader example of what you can apply for under that category, or what you can provide as reimbursement under that category. Any other questions? Yes, Cheryl.
Hi, thank you for taking my question. So this is related to other food boxes also. Both my nonprofits, LROs, have programs that are food boxes, weekly food boxes to 200 to 250 clients a week. So when you fill out that form, are you just supposed to count the number of clients you have or the number of client visits?
So it's the number of boxes that you're providing for. So
Okay.
speaking of the funding request, I can go back to it. And it says approximate as well. So just use your data from previous.
Mm-hmm.
Right here. So estimate, I said approximate, estimated number of foods or meals. So if you're providing, let's say you provide, are you saying that you're providing, let's say there's one family, but you provided meals for them Monday, and then you also provided meals for them for Thursday?
No, so the food box that they receive on, once a week on Tuesday, let's say they receive it on Tuesday, each food box usually feeds a family of 4 for a week.
That's fine. So you would count that as one client.
Right, one client, right. But they come in every week. So initially I have 200 clients every week, which makes for 800 clients a month
Right.
times 12 months. So that's
That's-
what I could put down. Okay.
Exactly.
I
Exactly.
just wanted to confirm that with you. Thank
Yeah.
you so much.
No, that's exactly what it is. And
Right.
make sure that you keep in those spreadsheets current, because I noticed that a lot of agencies, they kind of scrambled for the final reports. Make sure you keep a track of that on those spreadsheets that EFSP provides, and keep it up to date so that when the report is due, all you have to do is submit it.
Yeah, I will let them know that. Both of them are current on their reports, so
They
hopefully,
have been doing a great job too.
well, you give them great direction, and I always hear really great stuff. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Cheryl. But that was a great question. Any other questions? No other questions. We have about 18 minutes, 12 minutes? No, it's about 18 minutes left. I will stick around here for just in case anyone have any additional questions. I'll stay on a little while longer, but I do want to thank you for your time. Thank you for attending this technical assistance. And remember, if you have any additional questions, please submit them by tomorrow. That means that I have to have a quick turnaround with getting those questions and answers up on our EFSP website, so everyone can see those answers. But make sure you get them as soon as possible so that I can post them as soon as possible. Don't forget the deadline to submit applications is Friday, February 25th from at 5 o'clock. So make sure to submit early or before 4:59, just to account for any unforeseen issues that may arise. If there are no other questions, I thank you for your time, and I look forward to seeing applications from all of you. And before I finish, Cheryl, you have a question, or is that from earlier? Oh, okay. I look forward to seeing applications from all of you, and good luck. Again, let me put my information. Well, this is the information, other references. But you can always contact me. This is the email you can contact me at efsp@rifco.org. I answer that email as well. If no other questions, thank you guys for your time. And again, I look forward to your applications. Have a great rest of the week.
Thank you. This has been really helpful. Really appreciate it.
No problem. Thank you.